This show is sponsored by levities.co, raw, edgy, and humorless apparel. Remember, you don't have to agree with them. You have that right. Welcome to another episode of Mind Matters, the talk program that provokes critical thinking, logic, and reason. We encourage all of our listeners to use their common sense in all of their decision making, especially if it involves an issue that you think is important or one that affects your liberties and God-given rights. Hey, Dan, welcome back to another episode of Mind Matters. How you doing, buddy?
Great, John. Good to be back.
Yeah, man. We're still alive and ticking, and thank you to the listeners out there who are back to hear another conversation of ours. I think you're going to get a kick out of this one today, hopefully a mental kick. But we're going to talk about F.U.C.P, the Freedom United Constitutional Party, and why not? The founding fathers warned us about where we're at right now in America with two competing factions, the Republicans and the Democrats. And they feared that these rival factions would rip us apart. The nation would be destroyed by having only two political parties. And I got to tell you, they're doing a darn good job, aren't they, Dan?
Yes, they are, John. Yes, they are. But it seems more to me like there's just one political party.
Yeah, good point. It's interesting because if you go back and you look at those early elections, they actually wanted to, John Adams, who was a founding father, actually, and who was loyal to the UK, but they actually wanted to say if you said anything dangerous or derogatory about the president or any of the political parties who were in power, that it was a federal crime and you could be imprisoned. And Jefferson was like, absolutely not. Thank God Jefferson won the election. And that's what started this freedom ride, this experiment in the United States of America with the United States Constitution, which actually gives people rights and freedoms, God-given rights and freedoms, inalienable rights.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction that people get confused. Our rights as Americans don't come from the government. They're not granted by the government. They're granted by God. And it says so. So the government, all the government can possibly do is try to take those rights away. But the Constitution, thank God, forbids that. And we see attacks on freedom of speech is the big one now, I guess, that we're seeing. That comes right full face. And we have to be sure that we don't allow pleas for, why does your right to express your opinion override my right to not be offended? Well, that's the argument.
Yeah,
so
and it's
thinkers go ahead and start working on that statement.
Yeah, and they good point. Even when they shift it for a second, but when they even framed the Constitution, when they wrote the Constitution, founding fathers at the Continental Congress, they actually omitted political parties from any of the paperwork, and they believed that these political parties, I think Alexander Hamilton actually said that they were the most fatal flaw in a government was to have political parties. And even James Madison went on to say that a well-constructed republic has a tendency to break control of the violence of the factions. A true republic, doing constitutional things as laid out in that document, can break these factions, and that would scare any political party that's in power anywhere, not just in America.
Yeah.
I find that really kind of interesting. In fact, George Washington's family fled England because of what was going on with the factions there, the political factions they wanted to avoid yet another civil war, which was what English history was all about. Well, the people were engaged in a civil war. It was business as usual for the monarchy. And it's kind of what they've been doing with this racism thing here in America. As well, they've got everybody confused, you know, smoke and mirrors of the race card. They're doing things behind the scenes to take away more of our rights and freedoms. Would you think that's to be the case?
Yeah. I think that there's always attacks, like we talked about some time ago about how what a precarious position the United States government is in, and well, it's always in a precarious state. If you give freedom to your citizens, the only governments that are not in precarious states are the Communist Chinese Party that has rules with an iron hand and controls everything about everybody. So, we get used to the idea of the responsibility that comes along with being a republic and the citizens' responsibility to not allow these voices to gain traction, the voices that are contrary to the constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights that have been that we've inherited as a right of citizenship.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. When you talk about responsibility and, as an American citizen, we're going to get to the American word in a second, but as a citizen of this country, it is a responsibility. It's a legacy that's been left to us by people who believed in something much greater than themselves. It's not woo-woo, it's reality. And with great sacrifice and cost of life. I was always taught you take something and you make it better, you improve it. And so when we think about another political party, people always, say, what is the solution? Well, the solution would be that. And I just have a couple of comments and I want you to expand on them. What would a new political party do and how would they operate? How would we get America back on track and get away from these factions that keep us at each other's throats as citizens? And I would say the first thing that we could do is to start referring to black and white and yellow and brown and red Americans simply as being Americans. That could be one of the things that, Hank, the honey badger, the mascot for F.U.C.P, would put down on paper, that we refer to people as, in America, legal citizens as Americans. I think something that's important too, and I know that we've talked a lot about this, is to make history available, and especially, unadulterated history, but especially history that teaches about Marxism and socialism and fascism and what the reality is of those systems, that they've really never worked anywhere, and that they're actually an anathema to human rights and freedoms. And then, creating a network of like-minded Americans who wholeheartedly believe in the concept of America and in its document, which frames how the government is supposed to operate it, which is brilliant: balance of power, 3 branches of government. I think it would be nice to have a real strong alliance of people within this political party, the F.U.C.P, that feel the way we do. And then probably even more pressing, because I think, the pendulum always swings, but I think that it's necessary to respond to covert and overt federal overreach. Federal government usurping their authority or, overstepping their bounds when it comes to the rights and freedoms and the responsibilities derived and given to us within.
Right. The famous Commerce Clause that was used to justify a war on drugs that has destroyed one of our neighboring nations.
Interestingly enough, it's the worst there than I think it's ever been. And I don't know, I'm not going to even say, we think what's behind all these things that are going on, and not to be conspiratorial, but only what we see. And There's a real evil alive and well here on this planet doing things to destroy this country.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about a new political party, you have to look at what are the existing ones and why have they failed. Um, to me, obviously, the Democrats have support an illogical uh, philosophy and ideology based upon feelings and not upon facts and truths. As an engineer, feelings really didn't come into play very much when you're designing a bridge. What comes into mind is the safety and welfare of the people using the bridge. The Republicans, on the other hand, I guess if I had to say what's wrong with them, I'd say they're timid. They don't speak. Under all of these assaults, who ought to be defending the American constitutional concepts? Who's it going to be? It's not going to be the Democrats. They've selected their position to try and dilute the population and change the demographics of the nation. And their next step, of course, will be to grant the right to vote to all these illegal immigrants that have come on board. Get ready for that battle. But the Republicans, I say, they're timid. All I hear is from Mitt Romney, for instance, is criticizing Santos, which is easy to do. That's like criticizing the devil. It's not hard to find something wrong with that situation. But so I guess we have a failure of leadership, and what you're talking about makes sense. But John, what I've thought about is I've read about Marxism. I've read about the history of socialism and Marxism throughout the world, particularly in the 20th century. I've seen and witnessed the evils of it. But I've also seen a very explicit, detailed vision of what it's going to take to overthrow the United States of America. And of course, one of them is a race war. And this was even predicted by Charles Manson, if you recall. This is not any awakening of any sort. So, but there's a prescribed methodology defined to take down the United States of America. And I guess I'd like to see a political party that had a defined prescriptive solution to what do we do to counterbalance that? Where's our 10 steps to defeat these ideologues that are pushing this poison, and we know it's poison, upon the young minds of America and the unthinking minds of America.
That's a great point. And even Manning Johnson, the Black American, right? The American who wrote Color, Communism, and Common Sense in 1958. He also outlined how the communists were going to do it through this race war. And, we talk about timid Republicans, and then you talked about one party. Think about this, Dan. Maybe the Republicans aren't so timid. Maybe behind the scenes, the Republicans are part of the machine as well. And maybe they've bought into this globalist or communist view of the world, a hook, line, and sinker. Maybe they're part of it for ratings. Who knows? But
it could well be, and consequently, ergo silence.
Bingo. And when I think about those early framers and why they left political parties out, because they knew the political parties were subject to mass corruption, disparity, and just nefarious clandestine operations. They were even worried about it back then. And they thought that they didn't want America to become another UK with civil war after civil war after civil war, which the monarchy had gone through for centuries. And so I wonder, I don't think it's too late, but I wonder, are we on the brink of what the founding fathers were trying to avoid?
Well, it could be. And who was it that said that blood's going to have to be spilled to protect your republic? Maybe.
Yeah, that was a Jefferson quote. Yeah,
maybe this is
The tree of liberty must be nourished from time to time with the blood of the patriots and the tyrants. It's the natural manure. So there's that quote that, maybe we are on the brink of something that none of us have had to live through. I know you're a combat veteran, but I don't think that people realize on many different levels what sacrifice to have the great nation that we have, what sacrifices people went through.
Yes, what sacrifices people have gone through to protect the form of government that we enjoy, that has shown itself to be superior to any other man-made forms of government. You cannot deny that. So.
And even if you do, maybe you'll change your mind and come on board and join our political party. This is not a commercial for membership, but I say F.U.C.P. it. We could do something, we could take it in a different direction, but let's give back to the people. Let's bring Hank the honey badger on board, and let's think about why not in the great United States of America, why not another political party?
Good food for thought, John.
Thanks. F.U.C.P. it. And thank you for listening to another episode of Mind Matters, because your mind does matter. And if you don't use it, then it doesn't matter. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Mind Matters. Remember, your mind matters, but only if you use it. Stay alert. Stay alive. Keep your eyes wide open. Unleash the power of your mind. Wear a levity, raw, edgy, humorless apparel for the discriminating activists. Live free or cry.